Hello, everybody. Welcome to the morebusiness.com podcast. My name is Raj Khera, and I'm joined today by Dr. Jeff Kaplan, who has just been named Leadership Coach for 2022 in the United States by CEO Today magazine. And we're going to talk about how you get started. Advice that I think you're about to impart is going to apply to people who are managers also, coaching their team members. But let's focus on new coaches who are looking to build their business and aspire to be somebody like Leadership Coach for 2022. So let's talk about that. What is your advice?
This might seem obvious, but it starts with training. Coaching, right? First of all, that word is used pretty loosely these days, but it's not mentoring, it's not counseling, it's not consulting, it's not supervision. And so get training. I was a PhD licensed psychologist, and yet I knew that coaching was different than what I was doing as a psychologist. So I got 1,000 hours additional training on top of all that, specifically towards coaching. And like any other successful coach, I don't stop training.
There's a process, right?
To learn it. What is it? What is coaching and how do you really do it? And again, because it's not a regulated profession, like there's all kinds of opinions out there, but there are definitely ways to make a difference. And quite frankly, do you want to know if you're doing it right? Are you helping others create sustainable change? Or are they kicking their feet up and having a great conversation that sounds a lot like it would if they were talking to a friend or an acquaintance? If it does, then you're doing it wrong. And if you're making change for 2 weeks and then 3 months, they're the same person they were 3 months prior, then you're doing it wrong.
I think a lot of people are called to coaching because it is a transformative experience that you can have an effect on someone else's life and really make them go from point A to point B, where point B is really just making them much more happy and satisfied with all aspects of their life. I've always felt that there's life, there's not a professional life, there's not a business life, it's life, right? One affects the other, it's just like that. So let's keep going with that. What advice do you have for people aside? So get training, get some sort of, do you think a certification would be important?
It's helpful.
Required?
First of all, certification from who, right? I'm a big fan of, International Coach Federation. That's as American Medical Association is to medicine and physicians, ICF is for coaches. There's other associations, particularly large ones in Europe and others. But I think a coach training program that it is accredited, it says that there's some sense of accountability. It says that it meets some certain ethical standards and standards of practice and that kind of thing. So to that end, I think so. And I also think the market, you're trying to build a business coaching, then it certainly helps also provides credibility. But beyond that, let's say that you have the training, right? And then say you're certified. Next big thing I would say, and hire a coach. So hire a coach real quick so you can experience it, right? And so hopefully you're doing that throughout your coach training program as well. But if you don't really understand what it's like to be on the other side, then how the heck are you going to do it for others? Like coach, a lot of newer coaches, they get stuck because they're not sure they're good enough. And I'm like, well, get over it. Make it easy. Say to people like, hey, I'm learning this new skill, and I would love if you'd be willing to give me a little bit of your time. Whatever. I won't charge you or charge you what you think, or if you don't think it's valuable, refund you all your money. I don't make money an issue. Just get out there and do it, because the more you do it, the more you realize the impact it has, the more confidence that you build.
And I think, that's really important too, right? Being coached. Because if you don't know what it feels like to be coached, you're going to struggle to actually coach. It's more like you trying to impart advice. And I know that I've had a professional coach for a dozen years when I was building my companies. And it was the most invaluable experience because they really helped me discover things and helped me say things that they were thinking. But the moment I said them, that's when I started to feel like, oh, okay, I can actually do this. I can make this happen. And then I took steps, and then there's accountability and all kinds of ways that the coach in the session would verify that I knew what I was going to do next to actually make that transformation. So it's very important. You're right. Be coached. That's helped me in my coaching now as well. But I don't have a certification though. But I built 3 companies, sold them to public. So maybe I need a certification. I don't know. But there's definitely skill sets. Having been coached for a dozen years, you sort of
two things I want to say. One, around that, right? I don't have a certification, right? What I tell people about building their pedigree around is it gets you in the door, but it doesn't get you sustained business, right? What it's good for is, so for example, it's two ways that I see this helpful, right? So one is if I have a new client that was referred by, say, the head of HR, and the client wants to see who is this guy. Okay, fine. And or your way that someone who's works as an external coach within corporations or just has their own business coaching, you're going to be successful because you're successful at what you do and word of mouth, right? That's really that's the organic way that you're going to grow and develop. Obviously, supporting it with SEO and things that you're highly skilled at is also helpful to get visibility. But that's not, it's not your credentials that's going to a sustainable thing, right? It is being really good at what you do. And then let's say that somebody wants to hire me and they go to the boss, and then the boss is like, what is this guy? And so it's helpful to say, well, he's credentialed, he's got education, he's got experience, look at these testimonials, all that helps.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, so it's interesting you say that credentialed. So I think for anybody listening, I think there's a distinction here. The coaching certification is definitely a credential, but then so is, like, they looked at my resume, for example, past CEO of 3 companies, started from scratch, built them, sold them to publicly traded. They could look them up in the stock exchange listings too. I sold to. And so that, to me, that's my resume, right? That's my credential. So when they look at it, they're like, okay, I understand why you're talking to this guy. And so that's another thing. It's really important what you just said about doing what you do really well. I think someone experiencing a dialogue for whatever it could be, 30 minutes or something. And if you can make somebody realize just in those 30 minutes, like, just be a coach for those 30 minutes, maybe it's an hour, that introductory call, I have found to be really valuable. And I know that when people have that one call with me, they are ready to sign up.
So I think we can particularly as coaches, we can underestimate the value and the scarcity of creating a safe, confidential space with someone who understands your world and isn't going to judge you, but is going to be curious and help you together uncover, right, like different perspectives of how you're viewing things, and then emerges from that solutions, right? Who doesn't say, okay, well, let me tell you about me, right? Like, you have, as former CEO, like you and all these companies, you have peers, right? And that's great, and that's fine, and you can support each other, right? But then it's like, always, let me tell you about me. Your coach, number one focus is on your success, as you define it, by the way.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And I think ability to share stories and experiences is oftentimes really useful too, so people don't feel like they're
if they're
alone in
asking
what
for
they're
it.
experiencing.
So again, what I often tell coaches, like,
True.
now again, in a group setting, that's what you're there to do, like programs that you've been part of in the past. But as a coach, I'm like, when I supervise coaches, I'm like, why did you go into that? Just spent 5 minutes telling them about your experience, because I wanted to let them know that they could understand them. And I'm going to say, was there a part of you did you not believe that they felt that they were being understood? Even just by repeating what they said and asking a really good question, or a question that sort of made sense to what they were saying. Oh, actually, okay, good. Then you didn't need to do that. It's their time. It's their time.
That's it. That's a good point. That's a good point. Fortunately, I guess I've seen so many different situations where it's not just stories about my experience, but there's other people's stories too. And sometimes we learn from that. In fact, I know Entrepreneur Organization, the way you actually do the in-person sessions, we did this with I was a part of Vistage. You would tell experiences through stories, and it could be through other people, because we learn stories.
That's the power of group coaching,
Yeah.
right? Which we also do, right? That is a different setup, right? It's a very different peers, right? No competition, different industry, in different industries, right? That is extremely powerful.
Yeah. Let's talk about this for a second here, because sometimes people may be starting a coaching business and thinking, okay, I want to get clients. How do I find clients? So that's a whole different conversation, a very deep conversation, maybe not something we can cover in just a few minutes, but we'll do another podcast.
So you got training, you're certified, you're doing coaching, you're building relationships, other coaches as well, by the way. The next thing I would say is commitment. And I can give you a really quick story of that. So the year was 2001. I was newly trained as a coach, and the International Coach Federation had its annual conference. At the time, they were always held in the US, and there were global conferences. There were people from all over the world. Now they do it regionally. And it was just like, should I go to this conference? Like, I don't have the money. I don't have the time. Time and money are biggest issues. And then I asked myself a simple question. I said, am I a coach or am I not? Right. And I'm like, I'm a coach. Right. And well, if you're a coach, then go where coaches are. And so fast forward, I ended up going, spending the money, getting the time to the conference. So I was along the way, I was asked, I had the opportunity to do a breakout session. So a 90-minute breakout session. And I did it on managing stress, which is some stuff I've done a lot of in the time at the time. And it was like a packed room, people in the hallway. It was like a lot of exposure. This woman came up to me afterwards and she was like, hey, I want to hire a coach. And I was thinking it was going to be a female, but like really resonate with your message. Would you coach me? So we worked together for 9 months. I would tell you that I was like a little terrified, like, oh God, like she's a coach. She's going to know how terrible I am. Right. Exactly.
Imposter syndrome. Like
Sorry, go to
it
our
just
previous
hits you,
podcast.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And obviously
Yeah.
say it was successful,
Yeah.
right? But remember, because going back to imposter syndrome, it's not about you. And anytime the gremlins of doubt or whatever come up, stop it. It's not about you, right? It's about them. My God, how amazing.
Yeah.
This person is
Right.
sharing their thoughts and their feelings and their experiences, and they have hopes for this call and for their life and for their job. And it's just like, wow, what a beautiful space that we get to hang out with. And you're trusting me with this. Like, that is amazing. So stop making it about you. Get out of your head and get back to where the client is.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the next step in that process? So we've talked about a couple of things that to be a successful coach. What are the other
In
parts
terms
of
of
this?
building the business, or just in terms of being success, like getting some word?
They're connected, Zeph, right? And the successful business is, I mean,
Okay.
that's how you became
So
coach.
a big one, particularly, and this is true, I think, for almost most, if not all, small businesses, like you need to find partnerships, right? So if you're busy coaching and then running your business and having to knock on doors every day, like that isn't unsustainable, right? So in the world of executive coaching, right, you're generally partnering, not even generally, like you're partnering with HR, human resources, right? Because you are their solution, right, to the leaders that they support who want coaching, right? If you're a wellness coach, then I'd say knock on your local gym, right, and say, hey, here's an idea. What if you, as for new memberships, they get 3 free coaching sessions, right? And so there's a win-win for the new member, for the gym, and for you to get exposure, right? Pick a category, and you and I could in seconds come up with different partnerships to form. So that's the other one is like, and you had talked earlier, Raj, about doing full sessions with folks. That's great too. Like even us have 15 coaches on our bench, and whenever we get a new request for a coach, we always insist on a chemistry meeting, right? Okay, so we have the perfect coach for you, but let's you two do this chemistry meeting, right? And do a sample session is part of it. Then ask any questions that you have about the process and each other, because you're both making a decision about whether this is a good fit. It's not just, does the client think that you'd be a good coach for them, but do I want to work with you? And quite frankly, is coaching is what you need. Now, generally speaking, if you've gotten that far, you've done all the vetting and qualifying. So it's probably going to fit, but that's important as well.
Yeah, I think it's important to know what kind of coaching you want to do. So, there's life coaching. The search term life coaching is searched upon just in the United States alone over 30,000 times per month. It's a lot of people looking for some sort of life coach. But then we start drilling down. And by the way, just the term life coach near me, 11,000 searches per month. There is a very big market for life coaches. So there's nuances, right? You're an executive leadership coach. I am a coach for B2B SaaS companies. I help them grow. That's my niche. And if you start looking at, just as you do keyword research, you can actually see there are people looking for spiritual coaches. There are people looking for life coaching for college students. There's so many variations. So I think one of the other key factors in being successful, not only knowing how to deliver on what the coaching experience is for people, but it's like a niche. You can't be everything to everybody. And that's, I think, one of the biggest.
It's true.
Business,
so when it comes to picking a niche, like it's, you're passionate about, and what do you have some knowledge of, and and make sure that you're spending your days like continuing to develop on your knowledge. Really quick story in that is that, I first got into coaching in like 1999, I thought I was going to be a coach for parents of teenagers. It had been my past life. I did a lot of work with kids, and I wrote the book. Doing the online classes, it was like made sense. What I learned, Raj, parents didn't want to pay for money for them to be more effective parents. They just want to send their kids to therapy. There was no market for it. And it just happened to be that I was coaching an executive because I was working with him around some other kind of stuff. And he brought me in as his coach. And then and it just kind of he referred me. It kept going from there. And so in some ways my niche found me, but just to kind of carry it out. So 7 years fast forward, I thought, okay, fine. I have a PhD. I understand emotional intelligence, which a lot of is kind of what they're looking for, at least those that come to me. And it's like, I still felt like, talking about the imposter, I still felt like I snuck in. Here I was working with all these executives, and again, fine, I had a PhD, but like, I didn't grow up in corporate America, and I'm working with these folks in these Fortune 50 companies and Fortune 100 companies. And I went back in 2005 and got my MBA and did it. I feel like it was more of a self-esteem thing. I had to earn my stripes, right? But what it did is it helped me kind of living the executive MBA model, where you're living the same quarters with them every other weekend. Spending all that kind of time, 22 months, I really better understood. Again, they were further below in their career, but I understood. You just understood their world a little bit better. And then obviously I continued to get exposure and experience and that kind of thing.
So word of mouth is really one of the best ways to build your practice. What would you say to an aspiring coach who wants to get their first couple
get
of
training
clients?
again?
What would
claim them?
Okay.
I know we're running out of time, but another quick story. I did ICF conference that I told you about. It was in Chicago, 2001. And I was among my colleagues, right? New coaches. And I was talking about how easy it is to claim a client. I said, watch. And I turned to the table behind me and I said, can I tell you guys about coaching? Right? Again, 2001. And before you know it, I was kneeling on the ground for 30 minutes. I was talking to them. There was an executive director of a program in Florida. We're all interested. And I'm like, at some point I should probably get with my colleagues, right? But it's like, get out of your own way. You make the commitment and make sure the commitment is real. And if the commitment is real, you will figure the rest out. And then you'll hire Raj to help you with SEO.
That's certainly something we can help with for sure. And I've got a lot of free stuff online that people can read about life coaching. In fact, if anybody's looking, you can actually type in the word sample life coaching business plan on Google. The very first plan you will see is the one from morebusiness.com. That's a plan I wrote that will help you accelerate your ability to get clients. So in terms of other things that people should know is managing a business. Like, it's not just talking to people. There's a business behind it. You've got to really make sure that you're managing. You got to send bills out. You want to expand it from one-on-one to actually group coaching. And I've heard several coaches say that when you're looking at individual coaching, you have a client for a certain period of time. Whereas when you do it in a group, the group creates a bond. They have a commitment to each other. They don't want to drop out because they value that group, and that can last for many years.
That's true. But as maybe because of the psychologist in me, right? The group, I agree 1,000%. In terms of the individual coaching, I get irritated when I see coaches wanting to like keep a client forever. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't have long-standing clients that maybe hire me back for different periods of time, but it should be focused. It should be targeted. It should be measured. Like, how are we going to measure results, right? It should be usually it's 6 months, a year. Like, it should, they're not there for you to make sure you can get your next house. Right? You're there to support them.
Very good. Thank you so much, Jeff. Coach of the Year 2022 for the United States. It was great having this conversation, and I hope we inspired several aspiring coaches too. Thanks.